our topic for today is prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. Right. So I'm sharing this workbook. I hope that everyone is able to see it. And all right. So it's primarily actually more we talk about the subject, the more we think about it, the more we have scope to understand that there is so much to fathom in this, that it is actually this particular sort of a class is actually not, I would not say that it would end up turning out to be very informative, but at the same time I would most definitely say that it will help every one of us gather a new perspective. At least that is what the objective of this particular class is, to have a different perspective with respect to what exactly sexual harassment is. So in this session today, it's a very time-bound session, so we'll go as per the speed of the class itself. But primarily, what we'll be looking at will be understanding what exactly is the concept of harassment. At the same time, we'll try to look at what exactly is prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace and what exactly is the legal framework that is around it. Simultaneously, we'll also have a brief look at what exactly are the ethics which surround workplace culture and work environments, and at the same time, we'll take a brief summary of the entire class, and we'll try to wrap it up with a moot class. I know that all the lawyers who are here, it's been a very long time since we would have mooted, but we'll try to have a dummy moot, not a court moot, but a internal committee moot. So that's what is in store for us today. Right. So when we generally talk, look at the topic of what exactly is sexual harassment, and we tend to stray primarily from the major topic of that is understanding what exactly are the factors that lead to not just harassment being one word, harassment being a generic word, but a very specific connotation of it, which is a sexual harassment. So sexual in itself implies a bodily uh, implication of the entire act. So primarily we'll look at what exactly is sex, what exactly is gender, what exactly are the causes of harassment. So gender, uh, from generally this is a very interactive sort of a thing to do, but I understand the limitation of this particular medium, so I'll take you through this presentation itself. So wherein gender, if we actually look at it, it is a social construct. So gender is something which we can derive from the society. My society tells me what my gender is, whereas my sex, जैसे हिंदी में बोलते हैं लिंग, वो एक बायोलॉजिकल एस्पेक्ट है मेरा. हु एम आई एट द बॉटम ऑफ एवरीथिंग? आई एम अ ह्यूमन बीइंग. It is around me that this entire world has been created. It is around me that today there is existence of an entire country, a constitution, because I exist, because I, the person who constitutes we the people, eventually empowering the entire setup. But coming back to the, as I said, it's a very elaborate topic to have a discussion on, but broadly speaking, so the primary difference originates from our perspective and look of what exactly is sex and what exactly is gender. Sex is male, female, and definitely there is a an entire discussion about the third gender and the entire LGBTQ, and there's so much more happening in that particular domain. But for the basic understanding of this class, we'll try to keep it limited. But we'll understand what exactly the law says. So when we talk about what exactly is a gender, a social construct, or what exactly is a sex-based or a biological construct, then how do we differentiate between these? So there are primary, so we'll just go through this activity. I'll only take it for everyone, but I hope that you can follow it along with me. So there are statements like men can't cook. Now, I know many friends of mine, my seniors also, who are very good cooks, who are extremely good cooks. So this statement in itself, when it is being told to us, then at that point of time, it implies something like, this is specifically probably, something which is socially construed that a man should not cook, or probably say something like girls drop out of school more than boys do. So it's not that girls necessarily, due to their bodily or how they are created in that manner, they have to necessarily drop out of the school. Whatever constraints are there, those constraints need to be overcome, and that can work like that. So there is no biological constraint. Similarly, a man is the head of the household, so that again is a very, in today's world also, it's a very changing and a very dynamic sort of a thing, considering the fact that there are a lot of women who are taking the lead and doing really good work, who are actually earning a lot of money at the same time taking things forward. So similarly, there are more male leaders than female leaders. All of these are gender-based statements. So when we come to a statement such as a man cannot get pregnant, now this is a sex-based statement. So this is the difference that we need to understand, and that is the kind of an emotional empathy with which we will go further into this particular class and look at the various aspects of gender, sex, and how they conform and come together and lead to something which is as perverse as, say, sexual harassment, and that too when it comes down to the aspect of sexual harassment at the workplace. So, in the entire history and timeline of sexual harassment at workplace being recognized as a specific offense and that a specific work area, there is something called the Vishaka case which happened, which I'm quite sure that all of my lawyer friends and legal personnel people who are also handling cases for companies or HR people, they would be quite aware of it. So, but at the same time, we'll just briefly look at it. So, Vishaka case was a case which happened in 2000 in 1997, and over here, this is not exactly the name of the person who was the person who was aggrieved, but rather this was an organization which instituted a case on the person on the aggrieved woman's behalf before the Honorable Supreme Court, and this was the first time when in India the Supreme Court actually defined what exactly sexual harassment at workplace is. So there was no definition before this. Simultaneously, the Supreme Court also harped upon the fact that this is a human rights issue and there is a legal vacuum with respect to the entire aspect of having any sort of a protective measure for women who are working, who are going out of their comfort zone, their house, and how exactly we're trying to deal with the society also. So similarly, they said that there needs to be a proper conduct which needs to be taken into charge when it comes to women who are working at any sort of a workplace. So while coming out with these laws, because this was a Supreme Court originated guideline, so this was not something which was laid down by the legislature, which generally is the manner of a new law being promulgated. So in that case, this is a very interesting observation of the Honorable Supreme Court, which they mentioned during this particular judgment itself, wherein they said that in the absence of enacted law to provide for effective enforcement of basic human right of gender equality and guarantee against sexual harassment and abuse, more particularly against sexual harassment at the workplaces. We lay down the guidelines and norms specified hereinafter for due observance at all workplaces or other institutions until a legislation is enacted for the purpose. This is done in exercise of the powers available under Article 32 of the Constitution for enforcement of the fundamental rights, and it is further emphasized that this would be treated as a law directed declared by the Honorable Court under Article 141 of the Constitution of India. So the Supreme Court also actually had to go into the topic and specifically ensure that they have the requisite means and the power to come up with this. So just looking at the progression of the law, so these are the basic legal instruments that were used: case laws, precedents, United Nations conventions, as well as the legal framework which was drafted in India. So it all started with the CEDAW Convention. This was a United Nations instrument primarily for the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. So this does not necessarily only talk about the explicit forms of discrimination, but this in itself also talks about all the implied discriminations which are there against women, not just necessarily with respect to workplace, but at the same time in a very generic and in a very broad environment. So lastly, there were around 189 countries that were signatories to it, but there are definitely the law keeps on changing. So, so this was the basic premise of what India had. So in 1993, India ratified it. So it was there since before that. But then there was a certain number of cases which came about. So it was the Rupan Deol Bajaj case. This was the KPS Gill case, which I think is quite famous, wherein there was an IAS officer who was basically sexually assaulted by an IPS officer, and so there was an entire progression of this, and eventually the Honorable Supreme Court had to step in and say that this has to be observed, undertaken, and there are certain steps that need to be taken about it. So simultaneously, the 1997 Vishaka case, which we just discussed. So this case also, if we actually look at the entire premise of this particular law, then in India, this is the most fundamental ruling on this particular subject. At the same time, there was apparel exports promotion case. So there is this AK Chopra, who is again a person who's in a very senior, a very senior person in an organization, who at the same time, while discharging his duties, while he was not exactly in his workplace, but at the same time he was outside, and over there was an incident which happened, considering his seniority as well, considering his near retirement also. So, with respect to all of these ideas, also the Honorable Court observed that it is imperative that sexual harassment needs to be looked at from a very objective point of view, from the woman's side rather than from the guy's side, and trying to understand whether if a man had the intention or not. Then again, the Medha Kotwal case, which came in 2010. In this particular case, if we look at it, the Honorable Court actually emphasized it took a lot of suo moto action in this, not the petition itself, but when the non-application of the Vishaka guidelines came to its notice. At that point of time, it actually took upon a lot of activism, and it ensured that all courts, and at the same time, all organizations, all be it private or government organizations, that they will actively look into this particular aspect. And in 2013, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, Redressal Act was officially notified. So there is about a 16-year difference from the Vishaka case to the actual, the writing down of the legislation in this particular case. So, what exactly is the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act? Primarily, while the legislature has drafted it, has relied upon Articles 14, 15, 21, and 19(1)(g along with the CEDAW. So, they're saying that everyone has the right to equality, at the same time, the right to practice any profession without the fear of sexual harassment. The right to life is obviously implied, and at the same time, whatever special provisions are made with respect to women and children. So overview of this act. So right now, again, it's a very limited time that we have. So we'll go through the definitions. We'll have a look at what exactly is the intended mechanism for preventing sexual harassment. What exactly is an internal or a local committee? What exactly constitutes a complaint of sexual harassment? How do we incur the inquiry? And what exactly are the duties of the employer? So sexual harassment, let's talk about the main topic directly. So sexual harassment, what exactly does it mean? है क्या sexual harassment? So the primary word which we need to understand with this respect, be it when we're when we're observing a case, and this actually is the reason why we have to understand is that we may have the opportunity, anyone for that matter, in fact, may have the opportunity of becoming an internal committee member, wherein that person will have the opportunity of actually live assessing the cases. Right, so it's important for everyone to understand and also to regulate, your own conduct and observe other people's conduct also. So, an unwelcome act or behavior. So, this is the premise of it. So, it has to be unwelcome. At the same time, any sort of physical contact, any favor that is being asked for, or which are being offered, colored remarks. So today there are a lot of memes that are being shared. So that is also something which very much comes borderline in that particular domain itself. And it says any other unwelcome conduct. So it's not just any sort of a behavior, it may be any other unwelcome conduct. So unwelcome is the primary word which we need to understand with this aspect. So an aggrieved woman, who exactly can be an aggrieved woman? What exactly is a workplace? So all of these questions are answered in the definition. So an aggrieved woman is a person who is a woman. Primarily, it has to be understood that it's only a woman who can be an aggrieved person under this particular act. And that may be a woman who is working at a workplace, or that may be a woman who is working as a domestic help for anyone. So, in that respect, if we actually understand, we try to understand the gravity of the law, then all of us, directly or indirectly, are party to this particular case law, and we have to this particular law, and we have to understand that how exactly it works, what exactly are our, what exactly does our conduct imply, and how do things, from other people's perspective also. So, how do they look at things? So an employer is a person. When we talk about a company, let's say that it is the head of the company, or let's say it is the board of the company, or let's say it is any person, the company itself, which is discharging the contractual obligation. So it ranges the employer for the person who will be held liable. So this person can be a person who is for non-implementation of this act or the guidelines. So that can be a person ranging right from a person who is my immediate head and it can go right up till the CMD of the organization, depending upon who is at fault. Similarly, from the perspective of a household, this will be a person who is getting benefits, who is getting any kind of a service from the person who has been employed. An employee, the law, this particular act, again, we're not going into the details of the sections also, but it is very exhaustive with respect to who is an employee. And frankly, under this law, we can actually consider anyone who may be working for, even if that person is working for money or not, whether the management is aware that person is working or not, whether that person is working directly or on contractual basis. So all of these people can be directly considered employees for this particular law. And then comes the respondent. Respondent is the person against whom the allegation has been made. So again, there are other definitions also. So there is something called an unorganized sector. Unorganized sector is primarily wherein the law, the applicability of the law on organizations which have, say, about 10 or less than 10 people, like less than 10 people will be categorized as an unorganized sector. The law says that an internal committee, which is also mentioned over here, that has to be formulated in an organization, every organization for that matter of fact, which has more than 10 people, even if those 10 people are working at one particular office or maybe scattered. So they have to look at it from that aspect itself. Then there is an appropriate government. Appropriate government with respect to the organizations which are centrally owned, then that is the central government, and with respect to the state-owned organization, that is a state is the appropriate government. Then the domestic worker is any person who's rendering services at home. The workplace is again the entire workplace, whichever place you are working, and at the same time, it also includes places which you have to visit for work. So if you're traveling, the company provides you with airfare, or the company provides you a cab, then that place is also considered as a workplace for the purposes of this particular act. Then an internal committee or a local committee. Internal committee is a committee which is formed inside the organization. Local committee is one which is formed for a district per se. All right. So then there is this very important aspect which talks about prevention of sexual harassment. Right. So sexual harassment, okay, we understand what exactly is sexual harassment, that it is unwelcomed acts mostly which are sexual in nature. The experience has to be subjective of the woman, and the impact, not the intention, matters. I may have very good intentions, but the impact matters. So how do we determine sexual harassment in a workplace? So for that also the law lays down certain circumstances which, if they exist, then they in themselves imply sexual harassment. So which are in the form of, say, a preferential treatment, maybe a detrimental treatment. So that any person, they say that, okay, so I haven't made any advances to you, but since the advances were made, there is a change in the perspective or a change in the manner in which the other person is behaving towards me. So that in itself is a circumstance which adds up to the entire behavior of sexual harassment. At the same time, there are intimidating, offensive, hostile work environments. There is something called a quid pro quo. So this is, I give you this and you give me that. So most of the time it is actually used as a defense, that I did something and in return the aggrieved person also got something. So that is not a defense in this particular manner. At the same time, a hostile work environment, so that if someone is not giving into the advances of someone else, then in that case, people try to pressurize or create unnecessary pressures, and those can be covered under the hostile work environment. At the same time, a humiliating treatment has also been recognized under this act, that any sort of a treatment which probably humiliates someone, so much so as to impact their mental health also. So it's a very wide interpretation of sexual harassment, also much needed, I would say. But again, everything comes with their own aspects. So again, obscene phone calls, derogatory comments, telling lies, rumors about people, pornographic material being exposed, written material which is sexual. So this is again something which needs to be taken care online as of right now also, since most of the people are working online. So most of the communication that is being exchanged, so we have to be very cautious of what exactly is the kind of communication that we're exchanging. Then comments about clothes, what am I wearing? It does not matter to anyone else, at least not my colleagues, unless obviously I'm looking presentable. Then the extended forms, patting, grabbing, touching people, rapes, attempt to rapes. So all of these things, these are sexual harassment. So now, what exactly is an internal committee? What exactly is a local committee? And now, Primarily, the constitution is very much the same. So it says that for an internal committee, when we look at it, which is an organizational committee, which is more important, I think, from respect of private individuals. So herein it says that there have to be, say, at least four members, out of which one person has to be the chairperson will be a woman. There will be at least 50% representation. The maximum tenure for the chairperson will be about 3 years, and there will be one external member who is relatively familiar with the aspects and with the entire procedures of the law with respect to sexual harassment, who understands what it is. At the same time, the law very clearly says, and this is for everyone to know, that there should be an internal complaints committee, or what is now called an internal committee, in every organization that has more than 10 people. So everyone needs to know this, the women as well as the men, because this act is not just beneficial for women, this is also actually quite helpful for men if the law is understood and interpreted not just in its spirit, not just in its terms, but also in its spirits. So now looking at the aspect of what exactly is a complaint of sexual harassment. Is anything a complaint? No, it has to be in a specific manner. So there has to be an aggrieved woman, a person, a woman, a lady who has been aggrieved by a respondent, someone who has committed some sort of sexual harassment against them. So at the same time, the complaint has to be in writing. It has to be, at the workplace itself, related to the workplace. It has to be given to the internal complaints committee. It has to be within a limitation period of 3 months from the date of incident, or in case of continued incidents, in the case of the last incident. At the same time, the committee is to ensure that all assistance to the woman, that she is able to codify and write down whatever her issues were. And the committee can also extend the limit of this by about 3 months, but that's when they have very cogent reasons to do so. So this is when we look at the entire complaint, machinery, and at the same time the redressal mechanism under the law. So it also offers a very interesting thing, which is called a conciliation. This is offered under Section 10, wherein it says that the committee may offer an option of conciliation between the lady and the respondent, if the lady asks for it. So it is the duty of the committee to, at least explain what exactly is the entire act to the lady. And at that point of time, if she chooses to not say, raise a proper complaint, or maybe if it is something that she also wants to figure out whether if it's just a misunderstanding, which is a very good stage to actually clarify any doubts. So that can also be done. And wherever there is a conciliation between the parties, at that point of time, no inquiry needs to be initiated. But at the same time, wherever there is no conciliation possible, at that point of time, there will be inquiry. Inquiry will be as per the provisions of the service rules of whatever organization is there. Similarly, there will be different parties, right? Both parties will have the opportunity of hearing, both parties have the opportunity of receiving whatever copies for the laws are there. With respect to a domestic worker, the local committee has to forward the complaint within 7 days to the local police station for registration of an FIR, or taking whatever appropriate action that they think fit in that particular matter. So there is also a scope for action during the pendency of the complaint, right? This will be with respect to, that a person who is the respondent may be transferred, that 3 months leave may be given to the aggrieved woman. There may be other relief if it is actually somewhere advisable, or that may be included. And at the same time, there will be whatever leave is given, it will be additionally, added to the employees, the aggrieved woman's, you know, uh, list of leaves. So there is a very interesting and important aspect of the law which needs to be looked at, which is with respect to malicious complaints. Now, this is a very big apprehension which many people have, but at the same time, there is a provision for this also. So, wherein the allegation is malicious, or the facts of the contents are known to be false, that the evidence is forged, or the witness is giving false evidence. In these cases, the internal committee can actually go into the merits of whether if this was intentionally done, and if it was intentionally done, in that case malicious complaint proceedings may be initiated against the person who has made the complaint. But again, a mere inability to substantiate a complaint or provide adequate proof will not amount to a malicious complaint. Similarly, going forward, it is not permitted to share the details of the person who is either an aggrieved person, or a person who is the respondent, or at the same time the proceedings of the trial. There is a penalty also which has been put up for this, which is about 5,000 rupees for any person who does this. Similarly, there is also an appeal parameter for any person who is engaged in this particular activity. So, probably say a person who is a respondent has not been proved guilty. In that case, that person is happy. But at the same time, if someone has been proved guilty, and that person wants to file an, prefer an appeal, or maybe say the agreed woman wants to challenge the acquittal, or if there is some sort of an evidence which is not correct, or which is not admitted, or any sort of an appeal which may arise, that appeal may be taken up as per the service rules. At the same time, there is a very important aspect of this entire law, which is wherein a lot of duties have been imparted or which have been put upon the employer. So these will primarily be with respect to creating a safe workspace, ensuring that people are aware of what exactly is the law, ensuring that they know that who are the committee members, organizing workshops, training programs for their employees, providing facilities to the committee, ensuring that the respondent is able to come, that they're able to make information available to the committee wherever they require, to assist the agreed woman in approaching the police station if she so prefers, to initiate action if the crime or whatever the action of the respondent is so grave that there has to be some sort of a that there is some sort of a complaint which has to be raised with the police or any other authority for that matter of fact, then it is their duty to ensure that they take action, they initiate action. Then to ensure that the proceedings of the committee are going as per whatever plan are there. So to ensure timely submissions of the reports, whatever are the compliances under this particular act also. Then again, obviously to treat sexual harassment as a misconduct. Now, apart from sexual harassment under this particular law, Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, there are also other, laws or other, I would say, sections which prevail at their own respective places. So, if a case so warrants, a case requires that there may be, say, a section 306 abatement of suicide, which may also be included, then this is not the domain of the internal complaints committee. Though obviously, whatever proceedings are there, whatever, if it so arises from the findings, then that's an altogether different thing. But these are the proceedings under the Indian Penal Code, which can also be taken up. Simultaneously, the Indian Penal Code was also near about the same time amended so as to include sexual harassment, stalking, voyeurism, and such other things also, along with the changes in the rape laws. So that is also there. So there is a lot of protection in that respect. But all of these things will eventually come up with respect to each and individual cases, how and wherever it is that they are required. Prior to this act, primarily action was taken under section 354 and 509 of the Indian Penal Code. So now what exactly are the penalties for non-compliance of the provisions of this act? So this is primarily upon the employer only. This is what your employer has to pay if that employer is not ensuring proper compliance of this law. So if they are not being able to ensure that the inquiry report is properly submitted, that punishment for false or malicious complaints are given out, that information is included in the annual reports with respect to the sexual harassment cases per year, or maybe the employer themselves they contravene some provisions of the act. In that case, there is a possibility of a 50,000 rupee fine, which may be again, now this is entirely exclusive of the criminal liability of the employer, but this is with respect to this particular act only. And then along with that, if the person repeats that, then in that case the penalty amount will obviously double, and at the same time there will also be a chance for cancellation of that person's license from whichever government authority it is that they require it. So then it comes to the cognizance of offense by court. So if a woman actually wants to move any sort of a court, or the internal complaints committee wants to move any sort of a court with respect to any complaint under this particular law, in that case they can most definitely move the court of the metropolitan magistrate, or probably the judicial magistrate first class, as is called in some in areas. At the same time, the treatment of the offense is non-cognizable. It is not a cognizable offense unless there is a specific need of having that person under custody. So, Dr. Punita K. Sodhi versus Union of India. So these are some interesting case laws which are also there, and interesting observations of various courts. So, Punita K. Sodhi is a Delhi High Court case wherein the Honorable Court very explicitly said that we are not interested with what exactly, or we cannot look at the law from the perspective of what the intention of the man was while he was doing that act, but it should be more from the perspective of what exactly did that woman particularly feel. how was it that she felt is what is more important. It is not important as to how I feel while I am conducting myself. How the person who is the recipient of my communication, that person, because the communication is intended towards them. But again, obviously not with all of these logics. So similarly, there is the Mukesh and another was the state of NCT of Delhi. This is the Nirbhaya case. This was actually the case which revolutionized a lot of work in India, at least fast-paced a lot of work. Similarly, the Seema Lepcha case, wherein the Honorable Sikkim High Court, the Honorable Supreme Court, for that matter of fact, has actually said that organizations need to follow the Vishaka guidelines. So this was then at that point of time. The Rupesh Shari case was primarily with respect to transfer, wherein it was allowed. And the 2021 matter is primarily very recently only, I think last month only, or maybe this month itself, the Honorable Delhi High Court has actually mentioned it's an arbiter. Two parties were settling the case, and the Honorable High Court mentioned that these cases, the sexual harassment cases, are actually being used a lot these days to pressurize people with respect to cases. But again, this is all that is there. So now coming back to the primary essence of having this particular class, not just this particular class, but as a matter of fact, the entire subject matter of this particular session. So that will be that what exactly is, who am I, who are we, what is this world. So no one knows, and frankly science is also trying to find out whatever it can, but primarily what is understood is that you and I, we are human beings, we matter the most. We are why we create everything around us. We are why we live. We are why we earn. We are why we do anything, for that matter of fact. Our happiness, our everything. So primarily, coming back to the fact of the entire matter and looking back at all the precedents combined. So primarily, it has to be understood that it is a human rights issue. This has got to do with human rights. मैं भी इंसान हूँ, आप भी इंसान हो, हम सब इंसान हैं. कोई भी हो, मुझे अच्छा लगता है तब भी इंसान है, नहीं लगता तब भी इंसान है. मैं खुश हूँ, दुखी हूँ, कुछ भी हूँ, लाइक इंसान इंसान है. और इंसान को इंसान की तरह सबके साथ व्यवहार करना चाहिए. वी शुड बिहेव like people with everyone, and that is, I believe, what this entire the point of this entire activity is. Pressuring people with law will obviously not get them to adhere, but making them understand the reason behind it most probably will. So the emphasis, again, this is a good practice notion with respect to the world. So herein the emphasis will be with respect to equality, dignity, and worth of the human person. So what we have broadly discussed. So very, very briefly, I'll just go over the summary of the entire thing. We have looked at what exactly is gender, what exactly is sex, what is the difference, what is harassment, how is it implied, what exactly was the Vishaka case, what exactly, not in depth of course, but what exactly were the facts or what were the outcomes of it. Similarly, what exactly is the POSH Act, what is to be gained from it, what is the procedural overview of the POSH Act, what are the statutory obligations which are there. At the same time, what are the penal provisions and what exactly are the ethics and good practices. So that very much, my dear friends, is this class for today. I have a moot internal committee proposition for all of you, but time is nearly about to end. It's only 5 minutes left. Now, let me just throw this at you because this is a part of this. So every single person who is in this meeting right now, I'm really sorry for the delay, for my elongated presentation. But every person who is here is a member of the internal committee right now. आप एक इंटरनल कमेटी के मेंबर हैं. आपके पास एक लड़की काम कर रही है पिछले 1 साल से, जो कि अपने सीनियर के बारे में आपके पास आके, एक आप इंटरनल कमेटी के मेंबर हैं, एचआर पर्सन है, आपको आकर बताती है वो कि मेरे जो सीनियर हैं वो मुझे माइक्रो मैनेज कर रहे हैं. वो मुझे कंटिन्यूसली मैसेज करते हैं या कॉल करते हैं, मुझसे पूछते रहते हैं चीज़ों के बारे में, विच आई डोंट अप्रिशिएट. फिर साथ में वो आके ये भी बोलते हैं कि ये मेरे को कोई ऑफिशियल या फॉर्मल कंप्लेंट फाइल नहीं करनी है. अभी एचआर पर्सन ने आके इंटरनल कंप्लेंट्स कमेटी यानी कि आप मेंबर यानी कि आपको बताया. तो अब इसमें इफ एनीवन वांट्स टू पुट फॉरवर्ड व्हाट एग्जैक्टली आर देयर थॉट्स कि ऐसे में उस सीनियर मेंबर के साथ क्या करना चाहिए, जो कि ये कंप्लेंट है आपके सामने, माइक्रो मैनेजमेंट हो रही है यहाँ पर और थोड़ी इंक्वायरीज और अननेसेसरी या अनवांटेड टाइम्स पर मैसेज किया जा रहा है. So I throw it open to everyone.
I think he should be given a
according to
warning.
me, that's
Ma'am, one person at a time, please. Ma'am, बोलिए.
hello, Keshav.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if such complaint, first of all, any complaint comes, like in police manual, it is written, it is a normal and customary. PE should be. PE means preliminary inquiry. That's preliminary inquiry. And if trivial complaints are there, or if it is not of serious nature, it can be sorted out, as you said, ethics and good practices, bring in and solve it then and there itself.
Definitely. So that is one approach. All right. Anyone else? Whatever thoughts are yours, please share.
But if there is no written complaint about it, then I think the person who's accused should be given a warning, and um, that's it. What other action can you take, because there's no written complaint against him?
Definitely, ma'am. Actually, very interesting point. Actually, it implies to so many things. Again, the moment we start going back to this particular level of, because the Honorable Court has also said, the Honorable Supreme Court has also said that the internal committee, the report by it will be the final report. It will be the final inquiry report considered under the service rule. That this is the first report which is being considered. So this is just like the preliminary investigation that is being conducted. So there is a lot of relevance, and that is the reason why it's very important for everyone to know as to what exactly are the provisions. So it may be so guided that that woman may be asked to give a official complaint even if she wants some conciliation, or if there is a transfer required, maybe then there may be some sort of a transfer which may be provisioned for. But again, depending upon other facts of the case. So this is, I would say, in short, what exactly this entire class is about.
Only Keshav, only I want to add one last sentence, that
Yes.
apart from if the internal committee is not doing, or if it is not unsatisfied, so any person can approach the women's cell. In every state, women's cell is there, national women's cell is also there for such grievance.
Most definitely, sir.